Hi everyone, this is your history lesson. It's Mr. Molo speaking, and today we are going to talk about Islam, the appearance of Islam, the spread of Islam, and the most important characteristics. So let me just share a presentation with you. And so this is how we will begin. And I just try to get rid of my picture. Okay, so Islam, the meaning of the word itself is submission to the will of Allah. So this is what the word Islam means, and this is, of course, the name of the world religion we are talking about. So, what are some of the most important characteristics? Now, Islam is a strictly monotheistic religion, which means that Muslims believe in one God, as opposed to polytheistic religions like Hinduism or ancient Greek or Egyptian religions. Now, the name of the God is Allah, a name that is allowed to be pronounced and called. So during the prayer, Muslims would very often say the name of Allah, as opposed to Judaism, where the name of the God is forbidden to be spoken. Now, where do the origins go back? They go back to the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages. We are in the 6th, 7th centuries, and the most important prophet, Prophet Muhammad, was living in the 6th and the early 7th centuries in today's Saudi Arabia. Now you can see different spellings for the name Muhammad, as it is a very common name in the Muslim world. You may come across different ways of spelling it. You can choose the one you prefer. So we don't exactly know when he was born. He was born around 570, and he died, something we are certain of, in 632. Now, his early life, we know little about it. He got married to a widow who was quite rich, the widow of a rich trader, and that gave him the financial means to travel around the Middle East, and he got to know some of the existing monotheistic religions, and of course, he took a bit of inspiration from Christianity and Judaism. What is for sure is that around 610, uh, he went into a cave called Cave Hira, which was in Saudi Arabia, and this is where he received his first revelations. Uh, and as Muhammad couldn't write or read, when he came out of the cave, he dictated whatever he heard in the cave to his followers. And so the followers wrote down the words that became known as the words of God. And this text essentially is the Quran, the holy book, was written this way. Now, based on what he heard, the revelations, the words of God, he started teaching in Mecca. And quite soon he became very, very popular, especially among the poor people, desperate people who were ready to accept something new, something hopeful in connection with religion. This made him relatively popular, but the leaders of Mecca, who supported a different way of religious belief, didn't really like this. And just like Jesus, who was also persecuted, they also wanted to persecute Muhammad. And so Muhammad had to run away, had to escape from Mecca, not to be punished by the leaders for teaching a new religion. Now, this escape or flight happened in 622. This is called the Hijra, or the escape or flight of Muhammad. He escaped from Mecca to neighboring Medina, and so both cities became very important holy cities in Islam. Also, 622 is the beginning of the Muslim calendar. So, a different calendar is used by the Muslim world. Also, it is a lunar calendar, which means there are 12 months, but the months are shorter and they are based on the movement of the moon. Uh, and so 622 becomes year one. Uh, and so uh, basically, if you see a Muslim calendar, they would not use or not just use 2020, but would use a completely different date calculated from this event. Now, he came back in 630, this time with an army ready to fight with the leaders of Mecca, who eventually made a deal with Muhammad that they would accept the new religion, but Mecca should be the center of this new religion, which basically, even up until today, Mecca is the main city, is the center of Islam. Also, we'll see it's connected to praying because people have to pray towards Mecca. Okay, so this is how uh, the religion started with the appearance of Prophet Muhammad. So we mentioned that the Quran was written down by the followers, by the disciples of Muhammad. It is considered to be the words of God, so it contains the original revelations that Muhammad heard. And of course, it contains different chapters, altogether 114 so called surahs or chapters, and it is written in Arabic. So true Muslims have to read it in Arabic because they don't really trust translations to be the real words of God. So even if you're not an Arabic person, you need to learn a little bit of Arabic to be able to read the original revelations of God. Now, the five pillars of Islam are also quite important. They are the most important teachings. They are the five most important things that true Muslims have to follow throughout their lives. The first one is the Declaration of Faith, which basically states that this religion is a monotheistic religion, which means there is only one God that can be and should be worshipped. Uh, True believers should not believe in other gods, should not worship objects, should not worship different spirits or whatever supernatural beings, just Allah, the only God. And Muhammad should be considered God's messenger or prophet, the most important among a series of prophets. By the way, Islam recognizes other prophets like Jesus Christ or Moses, but Muslims say that Muhammad is the truest, is the most important among prophets throughout history. Now, the second pillar of faith is the so called Salat, which means praying. So we have to pray, Muslims have to pray 5 times a day uh, as soon as the sun comes up, so at dawn, around noon, late in the afternoon, and sunset, and also before going to bed. So you have to perform a special ritual of praying 5 times a day. Uh, if you can, you have to wash before praying. If you have the means, if you have water around you, uh, in order to be pure, in order to be clean when you are praying. Now, also, it is very important the direction. You have to face Mecca and use a prayer rug. So, most Muslims, even if they are traveling, they carry some sort of small prayer rug with themselves. In a mosque, the floor would be arranged in a way that they would already contain a prayer rug. Um, when you are in Mecca, you have to face the Kaaba shrine. I'll talk about the Kaaba shrine in a little while. Um, Also, the mosque, the minaret, and the muezzin, they have important roles in connection with praying. The minaret is a tower, something that you can see here. Most mosques have one or sometimes even more minarets. And a muezzin, who is a person, traditionally goes up into the minaret and sings 5 times a day. And that singing signals that it is time to pray. So Muslims, this of course goes back to a time when people did not carry watch or mobile phone and didn't know what time it was. So this, in a way, is a time signaling, and most of the people should stop whatever they are doing and kneel down and perform the prayer. Now, the mosques are the place of worship. Muslims should go and pray in a mosque nearby on Fridays. And you can also see a picture down here. It is typically a event where the people come together and they perform the prayer together. You can also see that people are barefooted, so they don't have their shoes on because they can enter the mosque after washing their hands and their feet, again, because of showing respect and because of cleaning, purifying. It is also a ritual of purification. And also, you may see that at the front, there is no special decoration in the mosque. You wouldn't see a sculpture or a huge painting like in a Christian church, because Mohammed strictly forbade the worship of any kind of object or depiction of God. So you cannot really, you shouldn't paint a picture of Mohammed or Allah, uh, n- neither in the mosque nor anywhere else. And also, this is an artistic representation, a painting about what a muezzin might look like in historic times, walking up the stairs to the minaret 5 times a day and singing quite loudly. These days, sometimes the voice, the singing of the muezzin is done through big speakers because, of course, the population has grown immensely in Muslim cities. Now, what a mosque might look like, you can see just some more pictures. Some of the mosques are very nicely decorated, but again, it's very important that you will not see any kind of sculptures or any kind of paintings inside the mosque because it is forbidden to worship objects. It's forbidden to depict Muhammad or God Allah. Now here I just put some pictures of different mosques around the world so that it is easier for you to recognize if you see one. Of course, the big dome on top is a very, very characteristic uh, feature of the mosques, and you can also see the 4 minarets. So this is architecturally what the mosques typically look like. This one is from Turkmenistan. You can also see the crescent moon on top of the mosque, which is the most typical symbol of Islam. So the crescent moon, usually together with a star, that appears on a lot of the flags of Muslim countries. This one is a nice mosque from Pakistan. Of course, these are the bigger ones, but there are, of course, smaller ones in smaller cities. But there are some huge mosque buildings around the world. Now, they don't necessarily look like the ones we saw before. This is also a mosque. This is from Mali, West Africa. And of course, it shows more the architectural features of the culture of the relevant of the African country that it was built in, but it is still a mosque, so the people who go in and worship follow Allah, follow Muhammad, and follow the teachings of Islam. Now, this one is the Hagia Sophia, which is in Istanbul, and it's one of the most famous mosques around the world. And strangely enough, originally it was built as a Christian church and was the biggest cathedral for about 1,000 years during the Middle Ages. It was built in 537, and it only became a mosque when the Ottoman Turks conquered the city of Byzantine and made it Istanbul. And of course, they recognized that this is a beautiful building and it shouldn't be destroyed. So what they did is they converted it into a huge mosque. They got rid of all the sculptures and paintings, and ever since it is uh, a functional mosque in today's Turkey. Now, mosques do not necessarily have to be very old. This one is a relatively new and modern mosque, was built in the beginning of the 21st century in Kazakhstan. So some mosques can look quite modern and up to date. Now, the third pillar of the religion of Islam is the zakat, which is almsgiving. That means you have to give charitable donations to people who are in need. So this is not optional. You have to give about 1/40th of your income. That's 2.5%. Zakat also means growth or purification. So, in a way, this could add to growth and economic prosperity, also coming from the idea that Muhammad said that people should be equal, people are equal. So, even if somebody has more money or more financial means, they should share it with other people. So even today, most Muslims should give some sort of alms to people who are in need. This could be money, but this could also equally be food or anything you can share with other people. For example, in this picture, a baker is sharing some of the food with poor people uh, on one of the special occasions. This is at the end of Ramadan. Now, the sun is also often referred to as the Ramadan, which is fasting during the holy month. Now, when this holy month is, that changes from year to year, because as I mentioned before, the Muslim world uses the lunar calendar, and the whole year is 11 days shorter than the Christian or the Gregorian calendar. So this changes from time to time, from year to year, it shifts. Sometimes it's in winter, sometimes it's in summer. The main idea is that for one full month, there should be fasting. Fasting means not eating. Uh, it is often called Lent. Uh, but of course, people would die after a while, so there has to be some sort of sense in this and some sort of order. The main point is that from sunset till sundown, you cannot eat, and you should also refrain from other activities like smoking. You can go about your daily business, you can work, but you should also spend more time praying, reading the Quran, sort of a self reflection period. Of course, people would eat when the sun is not up, so they would rise up very early before the sun rises and they would have some breakfast and some water, then absolutely nothing during the day. And as soon as the sun goes down, people can eat and typically have some bigger meals after uh, the prayer in the evening. And of course, you can see some pictures here where people are preparing for having a feast uh, in the evening or the last day, the very last day of the holy month of Ramadan is a huge celebration together with the family and friends and a huge feast eating as well. Um, okay, and so the last most important pillar of Islam is the so-called Hajj, which is pilgrimage to Mecca, which means that at least once in a Muslim person's lifetime, he or she must go to Mecca and visit the holy shrines and perform a about 1 or 2 week long pilgrimage. That means about 2 or 3 million people visiting Mecca each year. It's a huge logistic thing for the people in Mecca. You need a lot of accommodation, a lot of food and water, and there's a lot of people together. Also, there is a pilgrimage season, so you cannot just do this anytime you wish. So that means a huge concentration of people. Um, Now, also, what you can see is that people dress up in a very, very simple way. They are wearing this huge white gown uh, to show that they are all equal and they don't want to show off any fancy clothes, but they are looking in the soul and they are looking into religion. And this is also sort of a purification. If you perform the Hajj, you can say that you are a Haji, um, and you can add this to your name. And that sort of is a very important thing for a Muslim person to complete this. Of course, a lot of people live far away from Mecca. So for them, some of them, they need to save money throughout their lives and collect money to be able to perform the journey to go to Mecca and perform the Hajj. So this is the main mosque in the middle of Mecca. It's called the Al Masjid Al Haram Mosque. It is really a big one because it has to house all these pilgrims who come from all over the world. And in the center of it is the most sacred building of Islam. It's called the Kaaba Shrine. Now, the Kaaba Shrine is often mistakenly called the Black Stone. The Black Stone is a different thing. I will talk in a minute about that as well. As you can see, it's a small cubic shaped building. It's covered with a black carpet. And in the inside, there's basically a shrine, like a mini mosque. But most of the believers are not really allowed to go inside. It's only for the very, very high profile people who can go inside the Kaaba shrine. But people have to pray towards the Kaaba shrine, and during the pilgrimage, they have to go around it several times and try to get as close as possible. So during the height of the pilgrimage, this is what it might look like from the air. You can see all these Hajis, all these pilgrims who are praying towards this big cubic shaped shrine. This is basically the epicenter of Islam from all over the world. People, when they are praying, they have to face Mecca, and inside Mecca, they have to face the Kaaba shrine that is the black cube. Inside, you have just a few pillars, and there's nothing inside basically, because again, you cannot worship objects, you cannot have pictures of Muhammad. So it's a very, very empty and important place in the Islam world. Now, but the black stone that you can see here, this is a rare picture or drawing of Muhammad when he was placing the black stone into the Kaaba shrine. Now, the Kaaba shrine existed before the time of Muhammad, and people put all sorts of objects inside the Kaaba shrine, objects that later on Muhammad destroyed. But there was one very important object that is the black stone, which is probably a part of a meteorite, and it was worshipped before the time of Muhammad. And so the leaders of Mecca asked Muhammad not to get rid of this black stone because it was so important for them. So Muhammad made an exception. He said that, all right, I accept the ritual of worshipping the black stone because it's very ancient, might have been sent to the people by God. So he kissed the stone, and that ritual of kissing the stone remains an exception of worshipping an object. So the black stone was put into the corner of the Kaaba shrine. It is still there. So people who are lucky enough to get close to it can touch it. Most people try to kiss it or at least point at it so that they can perform what Muhammad was also doing. So here you can see some more pictures of people trying to get close to the black stone. So again, it is at the corner of the Kaaba shrine, somewhere at the bottom of the picture. You might see a small patch that is supposed to be the black stone. Now, I will show a few videos to you, just very short ones, about what it looks like during the during the pilgrimage season. So here you have just short videos that I'm going to comment on. So this is what it looks like when people are around the Kaaba shrine. There's constant movement. You can see that people go around it. They have to go around the shrine 7 times. They arrive in huge numbers. It could potentially be also very dangerous with the big crowds. There are often some accidents. Also, people have to go close to what is called the Voles of Satan. So they are throwing little pebbles, little rocks on Satan to make Satan go away, and also showing their hatred towards Satan. So these are all very symbolic acts that people have to do. And they also have to repeat this several times throughout several days. Also, safety is a problem. Sometimes, unfortunately, people die during the Hajj when the crowd is just too big for the authorities to handle. Now, just another video is about the carpet. I mentioned that there is a huge carpet on top of the Kaaba shrine, and so every now and then they would change it, and this is what you can see here, changing of the carpet, and of course that requires some skill, and so people have to be very careful with that, as this is a very, very sacred place, and it has to be done in the proper way. You can see the big door leading up into the interior of the Kaaba shrine. And also in the meantime, people are walking all around the place and performing their pilgrimage and trying to get as close as possible to the Kaaba shrine. You see it is more or less closed down, but this is only for the reason that they are changing the carpet. Okay, and just what the inside of the Kaaba shrine looks like. This is I think this is a 3D computer-generated imagery of the inside of the Kaaba shrine. You can see that there are some extracts from the Quran. That is the only thing that can be put on the walls of a mosque. You cannot put any pictures or any sculptures. It's relatively empty compared to church buildings of other religions. But this is what the interior looks like, but it is only allowed for the most important political, religious personalities to enter the inside of the Kaaba shrine. So for example, here you can see some rare pictures of most probably leaders of Saudi Arabia entering the Kaaba shrine, different princes or so on. So there we go. These are the 5 pillars of faith. The monotheistic belief, the prayer, zakat, that is the almsgiving, the holy month of Ramadan, and the Hajj. So resting on these 5 pillars is the world of Islam. Okay, and so in the next part, I will talk about other characteristics of the religion of Islam and also how it's spread out around the world. So see you later on.